I am in the cave found in the shepherd's field. This is the place where the angels appeared to the shepherds in glory and announced good news that the Savior, the Messiah, had been born. And the angel said, this is going to be the sign, that you will find a baby wrapped in swaddling cloths found in a manger. The question that I've always wondered is, why was that such a significant sign to them? And I think we have to be like good detectives and dig a little bit deeper to understand what is going on. The first thing we have to understand is that these were not ordinary shepherds. Ancient sources tell us that the shepherds around the fields of Bethlehem were actually priestly shepherds. They were born into priestly families and they were responsible for watching over the animals, the sheep and the lambs that were going to be offered as sacrifices in the temple. But even more importantly, a majority of those sacrifices were actually going to be for the Passover lamb. That's what the shepherds were looking after. And when those lambs were born, they were actually born in caves similar to this one. That is so significant because Messiah was born in a cave just like this, a cave where the priestly shepherds would have been helping to birth these sacrifices, these lambs that would be used for the animal sacrifices in the temple used at Passover. And one of the things that the shepherds had to do when the baby lambs were born is that they would swaddle these little lambs. Why? Because the sacrifices had to be without spot or blemish, and little lambs are kind of clumsy when they're born and they thrash around a little bit. So to make sure that they did not cut themselves in a rock and become blemished, they would swaddle them in swaddling cloths. So do you see the significance, my friends? That just like the lambs were born in the cave, the priestly shepherds would have come and saw Yeshua born in a cave similar to this, the same cave where the lambs that were used for the sacrifices at Passover were born, and they would have seen him swaddled just like the Passover lambs. And since Yeshua was going to be the ultimate Passover lamb who would take away the sin of the world, that would have been part of the great significance of the sign that they would have experienced. But there's something even more. Another key part of swaddling was that after the lambs were born, just like after a baby was born, they'd wash it down with salt. And so that's also very significant because God makes a covenant with the house of David. He makes a covenant of salt that was going to be a symbol for all eternity, that God had chosen David and his descendants after him to be the rulers over Jerusalem, over Israel, and ultimately through this Messiah, through the entire nations of the world. So the salting of the Messiah and the swaddling of him was also a reminder of the promise and covenant that God made with King David, as well as the fact that every sacrifice that was offered in the temple in Jerusalem had to be offered with salt. So again, we see a picture of Messiah, the Passover lamb who takes away the sins of the world. And there's something else that's very significant. I don't believe that they were ordinary swaddling cloths that the Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, was wrapped in. See, the thing we have to understand, again, these were priestly shepherds. And when a priest's clothing became too worn out to be able to use when he officiated in the temple, one of the things they would use the priestly garments for was to make the wicks of the menorah in the temple, the 7-branched candelabra. And I believe Messiah was wrapped in these garments that used to be worn by priests that were also used to make the wicks of the menorah in the temple, because he was the light of the world and the great high priest. The question is, where would he have gotten those priestly garments from to be swaddled in? Because he was from the line of David. He wasn't from a priestly family. Think about it for a moment. Miriam, Mary's cousin, was Elizabeth, and she was married to Zechariah, who was a priest, who we read about officiating in the temple. They knew that the child that Mary was pregnant with was the Messiah. And I believe they gave him these priestly garments to be wrapped in as a present, so that it would be a sign forever of Messiah's true identity, of his true destiny, to be the great high priest, to be the Passover lamb who takes away the sins of the world, to be the light to all of the nations and to God's people, Israel. Isn't that amazing? How God weaved all of these things together so that all the world would know who he truly is.